Sound test. Hello. My name is Stefan, and I am still building benchmarking library for Roslyn components. And we will continue building the benchmarking types for incremental generators. Those are source generators which have been added in Roslyn 4.0. So we are currently at the 5th session. We'll do a brief follow-up on what we discussed last time. Then we continue building the incremental generator benchmarking types. We will finish the implementation of diagnostics. One big part that was missing was the location, but also the other assertions. We only asserted ID for now. And continue on the analyzer config options, where we last time started refactoring the way we create our compilation, because we needed to add those analyzer config options. So we built an ad hoc workspace, used its solution to add a project and add then the documents there. But before we start, I want to do, for the follow-up, have a brief look at the metadata reference that we have asserted last time, because I found something. Well, last time I was a bit confused why the metadata reference provider was a singular metadata provider. So if we go into the definition of the, let me hide the windows and zoom in. So for the metadata reference provider of the incremental generator initialization context, this is here now defined as incremental values provider. However, this is because I upgraded to Roslyn 4.2. Previously, we had Roslyn 4.0. And in here, the metadata references provider is declared as singular incremental value provider. So there is only one, and in our unit test we received only the last one, which was something with XML, and I quite didn't understand why this was singular, and it actually turns out to be a bug. We see now, we can't collect here because this is a singular value provider, and this bug also exists in 1.0. So when we build, there is no collect because it's the singular incremental value provider. But when we do upgrade to 2.0, Now this will succeed. And because now it's correctly defined as, correctly declared as incremental values provider, so there is many. What I do with that in the test, or in this test generator, is that we still get the last one, but we also print out the length. So we create here a C# comment in the generated source file, and we have the length and still the last one, which was the same that we actually got last time when we only have the singular incremental value provider. And when we have a look at the test, actually I should have executed them all beforehand, see if everything is green. And it is. So if we jump to the test, we see we now have many metadata references, more than just one. And the name, still the same, system XML XPath document, but it ends with net standard 2.0. I believe this is from the package that we also included. I didn't include it here. Okay, I believe I then added it as a in the directory.build.props of the tests. Yeah, there it is. So the basic reference assemblies, where we can simply say now reference assemblies net standard 2.0 and actually now set this metadata references for net standard 2.0. If you would set, let's say, net core or net 6, now I assume this would be more than 113. Let's have a look at the output text. I will copy this test message into a separate editor. And yeah, so we expected 113, but we actually had 195. And the last one is Windows-based, because in the Net6 Windows version, there's also WPF and WinForms included. Okay, let's switch that back to standard 2.0. Yeah, and this is the learning from last time about the metadata reference provider. Okay, so the next point is now the diagnostics, because there is still there is more that you can assert with a diagnostic. What we still don't really check is the location. So what we do here is in our input text, we have this syntax, which basically gives a markup key, which is this 0 here. And then we delimit it with here, and everything in between is source text. So we have public class, my class 0, and then the braces of the class. And with this key 0, we want to expect a diagnostic in the inspection phase of the benchmark. So I'm passing in the ID, but also the location key, which should now translate into a location. Another way to pass the location could be by manually saying like the line, which would in this case, I guess, line 1, and the column start would be, I think it starts at 1, not entirely sure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So it would start at 14 and column end at 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Perhaps we will add this later. For now, I would like to use it with this syntax. So the syntax should translate it to that location. So let's jump to the inspection phase. And actually not an inspection phase, because in the initialization phase, we pass it in with the syntax. We also have an additional source where we have another one with the location 1, and this is another diagnostic. And in the initialization, we then create the compilation where we go through the sources and we pass all of them. So this is the logic where we detect new lines, detect these open braces, and basically sanitize the string, but also as a result then eventually have the locations that we then get out of that. So that we say location.create, we have a file path, text span, and a line span that we calculate from the syntax that we detect, from the markup syntax. And now we have the locations, and we want to use them in the inspection phase. We don't do this currently, so let's jump into the diagnostic here. And yeah, here's my to-do. So currently we only check the ID. So if I would like, let's make an error in the test. Let's have a failing test. See if this is actually working. Let's say we expect ID by an underscore here. And the test fails. Because, so we expected one underscore but had no underscore. So this seems to work. Let's revert the underscore. And now for the location, because I could pass in here anything and the test would still pass. It does pass, so let's fix that or break that. So I have here I called it flatten, because we for each file, or each document, better to say, it's not a file necessarily. For each document, we have a potential collection of diagnostics or of locations, or to which diagnostics are associated. So we get an array, and then we flatten it. And perhaps I should link this also to a file name or a document name. I may revert this later on. Currently, order is important. And from this location, this is our expected location. No, this is this is the expected location. And from this expected location, we expect this to be the same as the location from the actual diagnostic. And if it is not, let's create a message. Actual diagnostic. Get message. Perhaps let's grab this, and instead we say expected diagnostic. We say here unexpected location of diagnostic. Expected location and actual dot location. So this should not fail. And it does. And when I revert to position 0 and position 1 as expected, this now should pass. But it doesn't. Okay, so we see unexpected location of diagnostic number 0. We expected external file path 215, but it actually was 1321. Now the 2 concerns me here. Is that the file number? The file. Yeah, not the file number, the line number, because we should be on line 1. Let's debug. Perhaps I'm doing something wrong with calculating the location from the string. Okay, what do we have? The expected location. Let's have a brief look at it. The source span of the expected location starts at 14 and ends at 12. Didn't we say earlier it's 13 and 21? There may be a mistake indeed. Perhaps let's have a look at the actual test generator. Because in the execute, for each node that we find, which is a class declaration, we fire a diagnostic at the location of this class declaration. And the diagnostic is the ID 001. So we have, what's the location? It is, length is 8. It starts at character 13 and ends at character 21. So there is indeed a mistake. So let's start with a failing test again. I will grab exactly that string. Go to the inspector tests. No, that's the markup tests. Let's copy this one. Still need to give them better names. Fact, we have the string, and this should be the sanitized version, should be without the location markup, so it's my class, and we should have one location, which is let's count again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Oh, does it start at 0? Perhaps this is my mistake. Oh no, 13. Hold on. Character 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Okay, I'm not sure if the location starts at 1 or at 0. How could we find that out? Let's go to our test generator. Well, we could perhaps get the keywords. No, that's the class keyword. How do we get it? The modifier. The modifiers. What's the modifiers? Let's go to sharplab.io. So if we have a class here, Let's also seal it. Go to the syntax tree. We have, so this class here, that's the keyword. And the other keywords, the sealed and the public, or potential and abstract, or static, those are then within the modifiers collection. Well, we don't see it here, but in the type, we find them in the modifiers, the modifier list, which are syntax token, modifier. Is this how? I believe so. We spell modifier. And let's get the location of that modifier. Let's have a look. If the public one, where it starts. Because it's like the source starts with public. So we see if this is 1 or 0. Okay, the modifier is, yeah, it's indeed the public keyword. And the location is 0. 0, we start at 0 and we end at 6. But here it says 1, 1. So does this mean that the line number starts at 1, but the column starts at 0? Perhaps. Perhaps. Okay, so what we expect now here is, if we start at 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So it should be between 13 and 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. I thought it was 21. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, because the length is 8. Should be 21, I miscounted. Because it's 8 characters. Okay, now is the line position still 1? Do we start at 1, 13 and 1, 21, I believe. Okay, I guess we also need to update the other tests. Let's first get this one to pass and then we update the others. So this fails. Because we expect 13 to 21, but we found 14 to 21. Okay, let's jump to the parser, and I guess we start at characters, both at character 0, perhaps characters 1, but at least a column 0. Did I rerun the test? Yes. Still fails. Okay. Something I did not update. The source span. Okay, where do we start? When we find those combination of the open brace, the bar token, the hash token, then the colon token dictates the beginning of the number, so we get the number, and then this is basically our start. We say it in the amount of characters. Okay, I guess we also need to set the start character to 0. Line number, I'm not sure if that now also starts at 0. Oops, I meant to run this one. And that one now passes, okay? Let's see if this, but this one is still failing. Let's see why. I'm actually not sure how locations do compare. Perhaps I should have looked this up in the first place. So let's jump to source-roslyn.io and let's have a look how the location implements equality. It's not equatable. Perhaps this is the grand mistake already. So we compare by reference. So this, oh no, it does overload the equality operators. And it does override equal. It just doesn't implement equality. Okay. And that's then in the, okay. So they can never be equal because I have one location from a syntax tree and one which I define myself, which is not from a syntax tree. Perhaps we require a syntax tree rather than the text. Because what's the actual type? We have a diagnostic, simple diagnostic, and the other type is a, oh no, hold on. That's the locations, yes. I need to check the location. So this is a source location. It comes actually from a source file, but this one is coming from the markup syntax, which passed manually. So this comes from an external file location. Perhaps we should create the diagnostic, the location. When we create the location.create, there's another overload. I use this one. Perhaps we should use this one where we pass in the syntax tree. Can we get the syntax tree easily if we don't pass in the markup? But the syntax tree. But in the syntax tree, I don't have the markup anymore because it's not sanitized. I can't really build a syntax tree out of that. Perhaps we could convert that. Because we do need the text span. What if we but they don't really have the syntax tree here either, do we? We do, but we don't really know. We have the compilation, that's multiple syntax trees, but I don't really know how to combine them. Let's see. Okay, let's see how the source file location compares. Was it not source file location? Just source location? Just source location. And the source location implements location. Equality, and it checks if the syntax trees are equal and the spans are equal. And the span is the text span. Which is returned as the source span. So perhaps it suffices if we compare the source spans. in the inspector, we say source span, location source span. But I also would like to have a look how the external file location is equaled. First a reference check, and then it tests the source span as well and the line span. Okay, but we don't have that in the, because yeah, if we have the syntax tree, we can calculate in what line it is and such with the source, with the span from the start to the end. Yeah, okay. But perhaps it suffices if we do the source span. And it passes. Now I want to make sure, okay, I guess we can get rid of this again. Now I want to make sure if we go back to once, if this test now fails with a nice message. Not really. So let's also do the source spans here, location.source span. What about now? Oh, yes. So we expected 14 to 22, but we had 13 to 21. So, okay, this is really this off by one error. Now let's fix that again and also adapt the other tests. So we previously, it is like a simple one where we at the beginning, so we should start at 0 and have the length of 3. Where in the line position, I think the line is still line 1, I hope. Not sure how we can detect that. But the column is 0 and the column is 3. Okay, and let's see if that passes. It does. Then in this test, we have no diagnostics, so there's nothing to check. In this test, we assuming that the line is still the same, I basically need to deduct one character. So, not deduct, subtract one character each. And here as well. And the last one has no, oops, diagnostics either. And test number 2 is failing. We expected 1328, but it was 1429. Yes, I guess there is one more mistake when we reset the characters. Yes, so we need to reset the column. also, so when we have a new line, this is the logic where we detect that there is a new line, we need to reset it to 0. And when we, yeah, and it passes all tests are green. Cool. Okay, now let's go on with the diagnostics in the inspector. Yes, so we now have the location. What else can we check for the diagnostic? I guess what would be cool, the severity. Severity. If the actual diagnostic severity, so with the expected diagnostic.severity does not equal the actual severity, I'll grab that message again and say unexpected severity of that diagnostic. So let's have a failing test where, what does the generator actually do? It reports a warning. So let's assume the severity is of error. Test fails. We expected. Let's have a look at the entire message. Unexpected severity of the diagnostic 0. We expected error, but had actually warning. We also have the test message for additional information. Okay, then let's fix this to warning. And what else can we set? ID is suppressed. Well, we don't really suppress. We will be needing this for the diagnostic suppressors, but not for now, so we can skip that. We check the location, severity, warning level. Let's make the message. Let's check the message. Suppression info. Can we also get the arguments? I believe we can't get the arguments. We just have the full message. So let's check the message. If the expected diagnostic dot message does not equal, okay, that's a string, so equals the actual diagnostic dot get message. Is there an overload? It takes an I format provider. What does it do if it is null? Diagnostic dot get message. If the format provider is null, so we pass in string format accepts a. I'm rarely using format providers. Is there an overload which takes only the format provider? No, should be this one. format. Oh no, that's the format provider. Yes. There's the provider. Ooh, that's now the interpolated string helper. Oh no, that's string syntax. Ah, that's the new .NET 7 feature, I believe. String syntax, which enables editors to display strings in a specific format, like JSON or XML. That's .NET 7, yes. Okay, and now mistook it for the interpolated string handler. But there is no string format. Is there a different string format? No, can't be. So, but it has the localized message format that we get from the message format toString. Okay, we are now in the localizable string. Okay, I'm not all too familiar with the format provider, but the culture info, the date time info, and the number info implemented. So let's take the culture info, the invariant culture info. Invariant culture. And I guess the equals needs a, this is what I get for the warning, a string comparison dot invariant culture. Okay, so if those messages are not equal, then we again getting the message here twice. So let's say string actual message. Actual message. Use ordinal case. Ah, yes. Ordinal string comparison. Okay, and then we don't need that. So we say from the expected diagnostic.message should equal the actual message. And let's see what's happening if I don't pass anything. I think I declared this as nullable. I'm not receiving a warning here because I've disabled warnings for net standard 2.0. I also later on want to target another one, another target framework. Perhaps let's do that immediately. Which target framework do I want to target? Additionally, so I should have showed this. So in the directory.build.props, in like the root directory build props, not the props, but the targets file, we disable, we say no warn for all nullable warnings if the target framework is either net framework, because .NET framework has not been annotated with nullable reference types, or if it's a .NET Core app, which is 3.0 or less, because 3.1 is partially annotated. And no, less than 3.0, sorry. 3.0 is partially annotated, but not fully annotated, but partially. .NET Core 2.2 and lower is not yet annotated because this was pre-C# 8. And net standard, if it is less than 2.1. 2.1 is partially annotated, but 2.0 is not annotated at all. And if we don't have annotations, then we disable the warnings. So let's add another target framework where they are enabled. And I believe, let's have a look at the CS project that we are currently in. So we are using Microsoft Codes's C# workspaces. There's also another way. I can go to the package manager. Then there is an icon somewhere. Installed workspaces, NuGet.org. It is like here. Then you go to the NuGet.org site page of this package. 4.2 and this is Net Standard 2.0 and Net Core App 3.1. I guess this will change with later versions because Net Core App or .NET Core 3.1 runs out of support end of the year approximately. But for now we're still good, so let's target Net Core App 3.1 as well. So we go to the CS Proj, we say target frameworks, rather than target framework, and also add Net Core App 3.1. I think that's semicolon delimited. And yeah, Visual Studio has troubles changing target frameworks. Let's see if we do .NET build. We get a lot of errors. Is external init is not defined. So all the init only keywords don't work, but it seems that we now do multi-targeting. I guess I need to restart Visual Studio. Close solution. Okay, now we should get this errors as well. Yes, okay. So all the init only keywords do not work. What's the issue here? Is external init, so for the C#, is it 9, C# 9 init only keyword, we require the isExternal init type, which has been added in Net 5. So it doesn't exist in Net Core 3.1 just yet. But how did I solve this for .NET Standard? I believe, let's have a look at the props file. Nothing here. Let's have a look at the targets file. Okay, I'm using here, so this logic is flawed. So the isExternal init, yeah, should be included. So we include the nullable reference type package. So this nullable package adds all the nullable attributes. There's like 8 of them, I believe, for target frameworks which do not have them. And I use the same condition as with the nullable warnings, I believe. So this should be very much the same. It is. But the isExternal init we need sooner. So we need the EasyExternal init for any .NET framework. We need that if .NET Core app is less than 5.0, or if .NET Standard is, or if it's .NET Standard. Okay, I hope I get the braces, the parentheses right. So I'm kind of removing it from the inside out. If I did it correctly. Target framework is target framework, or if the target framework is .NET Standard. Do I need these? I don't need these, do I? That should do the trick. So I'm using this the EasyExternal init package included when the type isn't there. And 0 failed. But we now, okay, so this should get that working, but now we should have some warnings. Yes, this is the warning that I wanted. So if we switch now to .NET Standard 2.0, this is where we exclude the warnings because .NET Standard 2.0 is not annotated. So not all, some warnings, but not all warnings would make sense. But in 3.1, we do not ignore the nullable warnings, and we now get it here. I declare this as nullable, so if we don't want to check for the message, we don't set a message. But if we do, then we check it. So if the message is not null, and it doesn't equal. Now let's run all the tests. And everything turns green because we haven't defined a message just yet. Let's see. Message, I expect something. Wow. Test fails. Unexpected ID, so I should fix the message. Unexpected ID of diagnostic. I expected something, but it was test message my class 0. So because in the generator the rule has like a format. It says test message and some argument, and the argument is test gen. And the argument is the value text of the identifier of that class. So this was test dash message. This is my class 0, and if I would copy this down here, this should, now the second one should fail because it should say my class 1. I also want to improve the message of the inspector, saying, oops, unexpected message. And it says, did I run the test? Still ID. That's one. Yeah, it says unexpected message of diagnostic 1. That's the other one. We expected 0, but it actually was 1. So let's fix that. It actually is one all the tests again. Yes. Okay. Yeah, so there is what's now missing is there is a suppressed, but we will need that for suppressed diagnostics, for diagnostic suppressors. So we don't really need that here. So I guess this is, for now, good enough for the diagnostics. Perhaps we expand this in a, well, we will expand this in a future version. Okay, so this concludes the diagnostics and the locations. Also fix them. They start at 0. What I want to find out is where the line number starts. Is the line number 1 or is that 0? Not sure if we can find that out here. It says 114 here. What does this mean? Let's have a look. We are in Roslyn source IO and we go to the source diagnostic dot toString. Source diagnostic. Source location, sorry. Dot toString. There is no toString. There is no toString. Then a toString is on the base. There is no toString either. How is this toStringed? Huh. So there's a debugger display. Yes, okay. There's a debugger display. So let's jump to the source location again. Does this one has a debugger display? So I could look. Where's this actually? Okay. So that's overridden because the base class is defining it. Okay. And this one overrides it and says, well, get the base debugger display, and the base uses start line position +1. User visible. Okay, user visible line and column counts are 1 based, but internally they are 0 based. Now if they are displayed to the user as 1 based, then the user should also enter them as 1 based. Otherwise it would be confusing. So I guess okay, but I still don't know about the file number. Okay, that's the start line position 1. That's the thing. And character as well. Okay. Is this how it looks like as we see? Here is the debugger display. Oops. So it says add something : something, yeah. So it is actually internally the 0, 13. Yeah. So now we expose the internal representation, but I guess this could be confusing. Yeah, there it is, 114, 1321. So this starts at that's the start line. We have the line. Okay, so the line actually is also 0 based. So what should we now have the user and well, actually, if the user doesn't directly enter a location, but it is done via the markup syntax, then I guess it's fine. But the line, so we go to the markup parser tests, the line also starts at 0. So we have here the internal representation. So the line should start at 0. So I just decrement every line assertion that I have here. Goes to 8, 9 to 8, 14 to 13. Okay. And if we later also allow in the test to perhaps what I drew out earlier, where we said perhaps for example the line start, then the user should perhaps enter the 1 based representation and then internally we negate it. Or perhaps we have 2 diagnostics, like a 1 based diagnostic and a 0 based diagnostic. I'm not sure yet, but for now it's the first use case, it works, and we can expand on it later. Okay, we have some fitting tests, like this one. We expect the file path to be 0, 0, 3, but it was 1, 0, 1, 3, so off by 1. I guess the fix should be quite easy by first going to the correct type and starting also the line as being 0 based. Having turned screen. Cool. Okay, let's give those tests better names. We have parse. The use case is markup. So markup. Here we test both variants where we start and end with the ID. Then we have parse one-liner. We parse multi-line, no diagnostics. Multi-line with diagnostics. And diagnostics. Okay. full markup is confusing. I meant like everything is, I just say parse markup, simple markup. Okay. So on to the next one. We have approximately an hour left. Which is so diagnostics done. The analyzer config options provider. What we did last time there is to refactor the creation of a compilation. I still have some code left over, I believe, but this can go away now. Yeah, previously we used C# compilation.create, but this is insufficient as we also need to, this could be now, okay? As we also need to set now the analyzer config analyzer options. No. With analyzer config, add analyzer config document. Add analyzer config document. I think that's the thing. Okay, but how do we do that? Let's get rid of the old code. Actually, yes, we don't really need these. This can be just a for each. We don't do anything with this past collection anymore. Now let's make a for loop. We go through the length of sources. We grab the source. Grab this code, remove that. We have the index is I. And we pass in the source. Okay, converting null literals, so it could be null. Then let's say if get the source. If it is empty, then continue. Okay, warning goes away. We get the sanitized code and also the locations. We add the locations and the sanitized code as a document to the project. And then at the end we have the last project. Now we also have a warning here. Let's fix that because that, well, it does compile in. Debug configuration, .NET build debug. Okay, yes. Let's remove this for now. But we have warnings, but if we go into release configuration, this will fail. And now is stuck. No. Okay, but we saw it fails because, or it will fail because we enabled warnings as errors in debug. So let's go to our directory.build.props, and if the configuration is not debug, so for anything else other than debug, we treat warnings as errors. That means all the warnings must go away. So this could be null here, the compiler. Well, it could I guess theoretically be null, but not really. Let's say returns the procedure was null if supports compilation returns false. But this ad hoc thing should support that. That's a compilation. No, that's a task of compilation. Get result. Because we are synchronous here for generators, so this could be null. However, I never expect this to be. Dot assert compilation is not null. However, if it was, supports compilation. Compilation. Oh no, not compilation, project. Support compilation returned. In this case, then false. We never expect this to happen. And let's return the compilation. Okay, so we assert it's not null. This works because in .NET Core 3.0 and higher, or 3.1, at least 3.1, it is the debug assert is annotated with does not return if. So if this returns false, hold on, that's wrong. So if the condition is false, then this method doesn't return in debug configuration, that is. However, the compiler doesn't check that the conditional debug here. So this is how we can basically fix under air quotes. So no, we don't fix, we ignore the warning, we suppress the warning, but with in debug build I get this assertion here. And yeah. But if we would go to 2.0 and wouldn't suppress the warnings, now we would get the warning still, because .NET Standard 2.0 is not annotated with that, does not return if. So this is why we suppress the warnings, the nullable warnings for 2.0. But that's fine because we also built for 3.1, and if we would have a warning for the 3.1 build, the entire build would fail. So we will still be null compliant. Okay, I don't seem to need this. Now for the analyzer config document. Creates a new analyzer config document in a new instance of this project. Okay, then we return that project. Perhaps that returns a text document. Okay, so I guess we need to have here the project. So let's do this first. We add all the source files. And then we want to add I need a failing test first. The config document. Analyzer config document. Okay. But first a failing test. Let's see if everything is still green. Okay, is it? Yes, it is. So let's jump to the test here, and do we already have these documents? No. I will add a Let's for now make a string. Perhaps we make this a collection later on. Config analyzer config. Come on. Okay. And now we would like to set that analyzer config. Analyzer config. Not sure to what to set it yet, because let's go to the actual generator and let's see how to consume that configuration. Here we have the to-do. We have here the analyzer config options provider. I hope to receive there something. If we debug that, I guess that's quite empty. We started with this last time, but I couldn't figure it out. I did a tiny bit of research, but don't really have the solution just yet. So let's see if now with a new approach or a new retry, we now get it to work. Failing test. How can I get a failing test? So this analyzer config options provider could get options. We could pass in a syntax tree or an additional text. But there is also global. So we could have options per file or per document, but let's do, so this would be a C# or a source document, C# or Visual Basic or any other document, an additional text. But let's go to the global options. And the global options have, okay, they only have a try get value. Okay. So let's get this value. So we have the provider dot global options dot try get value, and we pass in the king. Perhaps let's actually, yes, this would be the bool. What's the official name? No, it doesn't really say. What's like the return check? Call it check. Try get value, and we have our, call it my underscore config, perhaps. And it should also out string out value, I believe. Yeah, but it's out string value, which may be null. Okay, which is null if, yeah, if this returns true, then this is not null. Otherwise, it may be null. And then let's say here, analyzer config colon my config. Let's just have a bit of some syntax. We have the boolean, and we get the, well, let's only do that if we find it actually. Let's have an if. If we find that, then we print the value. My config equals value. Okay. So in this test, so in the other test we don't add anything, but so this should remain unchanged, where we have like all the default values. We don't set a config option, but in the test where we do set analyzer config, we would now expect it to somewhere here. It is below the language version. Language version, so it should be here. Oops. We expect do I have here a new line? Yeah, that should be it. And as a config options, my config should be my underscore value. So we now should have a failing test, but only one is failing. Oh, another one is also failing. Why is this one failing? Because the line is now gone. I believe this empty line I need to remove now, because previously I just printed an empty line. Okay, only one failing test, because so this analyzer config, we see the minus here, it wasn't there. And Manuel is watching. Hello, Manuel. Thank you very much for watching, and thank you very much for following. Let me send you the link. So we're currently putting it into the chat. That's a discussion we're building benchmarking types for Roslyn components, which are then best used with benchmark.net. And we are currently building session 5 incremental generator version. We are quite far. We will almost finish today, most likely then in the next session, finishing it up and publishing the package. And the next step is then the iSource generator and all the other Roslyn components, such as analyzers I still have the PR open in the company that we both work in. I need to close that. Analyzers, diagnostic suppressors, refactorings, and code fixes. But this will be future sessions. We are still in the incremental generator part which have been added in Roslyn 4.0, which is a evolution of the source generators which have been added in Roslyn 3.8, which is .NET 5. All right, and we basically have the benchmark itself pretty much complete. One step is left, because usually, or what I found usually, is that the benchmark is somehow initialized. Then we have the actual invocation phase, where we really invoke the benchmark a lot of times, benchmark.net style. And some benchmarks that I saw then in one place or another have some sort of assertion, similar to a unit test, to still confirm that what is actually tested is what is benchmarked is actually what generates an output that is expected. So I also want to have a smaller inspection phase. It shouldn't be like as thorough as real unit testing, but cover the most important parts, which is of an incremental generator. So we have here an example implementation of an incremental generator, and this one covers I'll come to the comment just in a minute. All the providers that an incremental generator has, such as a syntax provider, compilation provider, parse options provider, additional text provider, the metadata reference provider, and the last step that is left is the analyzer config options provider. And then we covered all the providers and concludes the most important parts for an incremental generator to inspect. And the hand says hi. That's a bit of an insider joke. Hi back. All right. So now we have a failing test. And we do not print this config option because we couldn't find it. Now we need to add it. we have here the config option. So I try to be naive and basically go to the test and try to edit my config options equals my underscore value. And if we jump to here, I would like to add this analyzer config document. What does this method look like? Creates a new analyzer config document in a new instance of this project. So with Roslyn, everything is immutable. So this does not manipulate the project itself. It creates a new one. We have a name, we have a source text, and we have potentially a folder and a file path, but those are optional. Let's skip them for now. So the name, I call it analyzer config. Source text, we need source text, so we need to create that. This would be the analyzer config. We can say source text.from, which takes string and encoding. Okay, we don't need to care about the encoding or the secure hash algorithm. We just need the text. The text that we have from our context. So this is context.analyzer config. And we passed that. So let's only do that if we actually set it. If analyzer config, and here we get then the nullable warning. Analyzer config may be null because I wanted to declare this optional. Analyzer config is not null. Now the warning goes away because the static flow analysis understands we have a null check in this scope. And okay, but we don't care about folders and nor file paths for now. So since this is immutable, this returns us a document, a new text document. Document. And I hope that this document now has the project, the reference to the project where it is in. Yes, because this is now the mutated project. Because the initial project that we call this method on remains unchanged. Roslyn, everything is immutable. So we get from the document the project. Because we need that project, the updated project, then to grab the compilation from. But we only do that if we set some analyzer config. Now, let's see if this works. We jump in, we have the my config, my value here. We create a document. This document we can say get text async. Then we have the text. Okay, that looks promising. Oops, I didn't mean to stop the test, but to continue it. And argument exception. That fills my heart with sadness. Must be an absolute path to the editor config file. Okay, so we expect an editor config file here. Perhaps also a analyzer config file works, but let's see. I think we had a look at this last time. That's .NET analyzers code analysis something. Yes. There is two ways of configuration of analyzers, either via an editor config, which always has a section, or a analyzer config, which does not have the section, but we say is global true. The syntax then is quite the same, but it's not within a section. And I hope to, do we need to do this perhaps? But the thing is about analyzer config files, they need to be called global config. If they're not called global config, then we need to include them manually. But since we only have one, I will call it global config and hope not be required to set this, because I'm not entirely sure how to add an item group via the Roslyn syntax. At least for now, I never did this. So let's set the name of this to global config. But this doesn't fix the error just yet, because must be an absolute path to an editor config. The file path is the last one, so perhaps we need to set slash dot, or is it backward slash? I always forget. Let's see what this does. Hopefully giving a different error. Okay, no, so this now seems to work, but we do not print this myconfig. The value is not found. Let's jump to the generator. Run the test again. Have a look at the global options of this provider, and we see the count is 0. But perhaps because I'm missing the is global true, or I really need to add it via that, but this will be the second try. I'm lacking the is global true, so let's add that. So to the source text, let's say we have, let's do an interpolated string of this one. Boom, boom, we add the is global true. Oops, this is of course a literal, and then we say environment dot new line. Now so this looks, we have is global equals true, and then my config value. If we jump to the documentation, this looks like a valid syntax. Perhaps I will actually use this as well to use the same naming. So in the test, we say here option name, and we expect option name, copy that, option name equals option value, and we pass in where's the here as well. Okay, but it doesn't work yet. Or does it? I didn't let the test finish. No, but perhaps the path is wrong here. Perhaps this needs to be a or no backslash at all. Now if an argument exception must be a path to an absolute. Okay, let's try a backslash. So yeah, need to escape the backslash. But would this then also work on Unix? Not sure. Well, if it works, let's see. No, it doesn't. So I guess the forward slash was kind of fine, but it does not work. Maybe because I indeed need to add it to the project. Okay. Haha, I'm not sure how to do this. Project dot add. Can you like add item group or something? Roslyn add item group to project. Why is that taking care of this already? Not sure. What I'll also try is perhaps the other variation, the editor config version. So an editor config is a file which is called editor config. Editor config, document, editor config. Let's try that. Where we we have a dot editor config. Dot editor config. Why is this? This is the file path. Does the file path include the name, or is it just like slash to be in the root? Not sure. Editor config. Perhaps let's try that first. If we just remove that from here. This gives again an error. Must be an absolute path. Okay. So let's have that. And we have the analyzer config. Okay, but that now looks different because the analyzer the editor config. I believe we can start with to have like a full thing is root. There it is, there it is, there it is. So we have, say it's the root one. We create a new line, then we create the section. We are in C#, so we have a C# section, I believe. Then for the Visual Basic version, we need to make this a parameter and have then the key value pair. No, it still doesn't find it. Oh, I still have my config here. Yeah, okay. This does not work, or wouldn't work. It's option name. Let's see if the setup is correct. So when we run this and we have a look at this project, we see we have 3 documents. Those are the source files, and we have analyzer config documents, global config, and the editor config. Not sure if perhaps this thing, the path could be wrong. It has no folders. Not sure what yeah, it's in no folder. It's in the root. Compiler generated compilation, yes. And oops, yeah, so that actually looks all right. And if we jump to the document, we still have count 0, which fills my heart with sadness. Isn't Manuel White, isn't .global config still a relative path and not an absolute path? Because I have a dot in it? Should I remove that slash and just have dot? I tried that, but this didn't work. Now we get the when we run the generator, we get the error must be an absolute path to an editor config file. But perhaps if we where's my create compilation? There's my create compilation. If we perhaps this analyzer config doesn't work. Let's try that. Still the same issue when we run the generator. Perhaps you're onto something. Perhaps the path is still wrong. Now, I guess the Microsoft.codeanalysis.testing that they do something quite similar. Oops, this one. As always, at the end I will add everything that we clicked through also to the documentation or to this discussion, to have like all the links to all the resources. And I believe are doing something similar. So let's have a look if they actually also invoke analyzer config document. And they use, I will just copy this very syntax. The file path is that. They have no folders, but the sourced text, they use UTF encoding. Let's do that too. And yeah, so they added via the solution, they then pass the ID to the document. Okay, so this is an analyzer config option. This is specifically added to a document, but I would like to add it to the entire project. But maybe that is causing issues. Maybe I need to add this like to each and every document. But then I would need to extract it via the other versions of the options. But I don't really want to do that here. But let's see if this changes something. It does not. have a look at any other provider. Dot the global options still super zero. Okay. Now using this correct string here. Perhaps we see something in the Roslyn SDK. So they seem to add it to specific documents. Create changed solution. Root editor config, which is, okay, that's also a test. So they have like root is true, a match all pattern, and the key. Perhaps, do we need like the no, I doubt that. But just to be sure, let's add another new line at the end. Okay. Let's have a look how this looks like. Root is true. Perhaps, perhaps this is my ground mistake. Grand malheur. If we, after DCS, also have a new line here. And now it looks more valid, but not sure if this changes anything. Does not. Well, I just know that the test failed. I didn't know how it failed. Yeah, it's still quite missing. Okay, let's string source. Make sure to, let's make a verbatim string, and we do quite the same as the Microsoft team does it. We have a new line, root is true. Oops. Blank line. CS. Perhaps. Oh, yeah, let's also use the all pattern, just to be sure. And then the text. So we have here the source. And okay, so we need a verbatim string, interpolated verbatim string. And I guess now it should look exactly like this here. New line, root, blank, all pattern, value, new line. To confirm, here it is. But the test still fails. But let's inspect this if check here. The global options still quite empty. So in Microsoft testing, Microsoft Code Analysis testing, they enable, you can pass multiple. Perhaps I improve this later on, but this is basically the thing that we do for now, isn't it? Yep. Perhaps we find something else where this is used. Here. Ah, okay. So this is a custom overload that we saw previously, where you can do it via the solution. And there is so we have a reflection. They get, I guess they get this method with reflection. Create a delegate. Okay. Maybe add analyzer config document is the wrong thing, but in this test it looks like it is the right thing. Do they assert the key or the value somewhere? Ah, there is something. Equal or diff. Content of editor config did not match. Diff shown with expected as baseline. I believe I am running again out of ideas. How is actually additional texts working? It isn't. I don't have an assertion for additional texts. Okay, I think there is another issue that here we don't do that yet. Do we not have a test for that? There is one. Well, I do add it here to the additional sources, but it's not as additional texts. Okay, I think another issue that we have is that I made a mistake here for the additional texts, but I'm not distracting because I don't know how to solve the analyzer config options. So as for the last 10 minutes, I will try to implement that and then have a last one try here, and otherwise I try to find out until the next session in a week what to do there. So what do we assert here for the additional texts? Because there's also an additional texts provider. And I realized that we have no add additional text here anywhere. Like add additional document. How did I mean to test this? I have here inspect code, and we have additional source, but that's additional sources, not additional texts. There is my issue. There's my problem. So we also need. Let's make a path. Additional texts. If this is how they're also called in the. Yeah, so this is the additional texts provider. So additional texts. Okay. And I also want to assert additional texts equals to, well, I also need to add them. So this is the assertion, but we also need to, oh, there, aha, I do add them, additional texts. But it doesn't seem that I do assert them. Well, we do feed them in, but we don't assert them just yet. To the generator. Ooh, so they are passed into the generator driver. They are not part of the compilation. I guess they could be part of the compilation. But in that case, they are added additional. So perhaps it's fine. Perhaps it's fine. But I'm not really asserting these, am I? I do have here additional text 1. Ah, now I recall. Okay, no, actually, we did this. This is working. Sorry. Caused a bit of a confusion. I tried to distract. Because from the additional texts, our generator creates new files with the path, but adds another extension to it and then the string. And we then actually do assert these. So if I add here, like in the inspection phase, if I do say additional text 2, this will fail. Okay, but it's not part of the, we don't add it in this compilation, but we add a generator driver because the generator driver allows it. Yeah. So we fail previously already. Let me get rid of this for now. So this should be a failing test still. I hope. Yes, it is. Because, yeah, additional text 2, but was 1. Okay, so additional texts are working. Sorry for the confusion, but it's okay. It's the because we don't assert these additional texts, we assert the output of the generator, and we convert the additional texts to sources, which basically consist of the additional text in a comment field. So that's all right. Okay, but how do we go about the analyzer config? If config is not null, oops, we would like to add it. So this seems thank you, Manuel. He said it's nice to see me in action. It's nice to have you here, and I'm glad you like it. And yeah, I will keep it up. If I find what I'm doing wrong here, I'll give it 5 more minutes, perhaps maybe 10. Then we close for today, and I need to go into research mode. How to add config documents. So, but technically this looks all right. We've to the project, add a new document, and we then get the project, then get the compilation. So down there it should definitely be included. It is included as analyzer config document. There it is. Source text is null. Did something else go wrong? Is this empty? How can we get can we get text? Get text async. No, there it is. It does contain that. But still some another overload. Contains analyzer config document. Get analyzer config document. Okay, now that surprises me. Get analyzer config document returns analyzer config document. But add analyzer config document returns text document and not analyzer config document. Was it perhaps not added? If we... No, but it's there. Project.get analyzer config document, and we pass in the ID. This should have an ID. This is now the And there's also a contains project.contains analyzer config document ec.id. And the analyzer config document contains is true. Okay, so it is in the project. This looks good. And here is the analyzer config document. Get text. And there's the text. Okay, so it's not that, I believe. But what is it? The path? Does it need to be added? Let's try the same approach also for the global config. So we prepend a // to the global config. We have the string source, make that a interpolated verbatim string. Start with global is true. That, let's see what the documentation says. Well, also should be without a line break, valid, but here they have, so both should be fine. And we used it source, we will also do UTF-8 coding.utf-8. Okay, then we have the config, we add that, have no folders, and we grab that document, assign it to the project. Still fails. Okay, I believe I need to go back to research mode. Okay, but this is the last thing for the first release. Then some cleanup and get the package ready for deployment, which then will be done in the very next session. I hope I figured this out until then. So let's stop for today. We have followed up on session 4. We found that there is a bug in Roslyn 4.0 and 4.1 where the metadata references provider is wrongly declared as the singular value provider, but should be a plural values provider, which is fixed in Roslyn 4.2 and higher. We finished the diagnostics, but we couldn't finish the provider here yet, so we will continue on that. This will be the last step in the next session, in a week from now, minus approximately 2 hours. And then where we also then either, not sure if we'll do it, if we do it on stream, we will be writing a GitHub action, but perhaps I do it off stream and then show that action. And actually release that package. And maybe we also start to implement the next thing, which is the iSource generator. But this is like optional, not sure if we do that yet. Anyway, I will then, after this Sunday, we'll break for 1 week. I will update the agenda. So this is on the 10th, there will be no stream, and then we'll continue then on the 17th again. And latest on the 17th, we will then start implementing the same for the iSource generator, which should be rather easy. I guess only moving some types to a base type using an older version of Roslyn 3.8 and see if we get everything compatible. And then the output then will be not just one package, but actually 3 packages, where we then release the, again, oops, come on, the incremental the C# incremental generator, also the C# source generator, and some common C# benchmarking package, which basically will most likely contain how we create the compilation from both projects. But there is a slight difference because one uses incremental generator, one iSource generator. But then the special projects then are rather slim, other than the incremental generator. This is why I wanted to have 2 incremental generator will target 4.0 and source generator will target 3.8, because this is the respective version where this feature has initially been released, to have the widest compatibility possible. All right. I will, as always, then all the links will add to the discussion. I will update the next and follow sessions. And with that, I want to thank you very much for staying a while and listening, and hopefully see you next time. May Roslyn be with you.